Look at this. Really, look at it. It's paper, cotton and linen fibers, some green ink, a dead president's face staring back at you. Burn it and you get ash. Eat it and you get a stomachache. On its own, this piece of paper cannot feed you, clothe you, or shelter you. And yet you would find someone who tried to take it from you. That's not an economy. That's a hallucination, a shared one. The biggest one humanity has ever agreed to have, together, on purpose. We all decided, collectively, that these worthless little rectangles are worth killing and dying for. And we have been so good at maintaining the illusion that most of us never stop to ask a very simple question. Who convinced us to believe this in the first place? Rewind 900 years. Forget London. Forget Amsterdam. Forget every European banking dynasties you have ever heard of. They haven't been born yet. This is Chengdu in Sichuan province, and this is where humanity, for the very first time in recorded history, decided that paper could be power. And here's the part nobody tells you. It wasn't a king's idea. It wasn't a genius minister's 5-year plan. It was invented by a group of furious, exhausted merchants who were being physically crushed by the weight of their own money. By the 10th century, the Song dynasty is in the middle of something the rest of the world won't experience for centuries. A full-blown commercial revolution. Cities are booming. Trade routes are humming. There is more money moving through China right now than almost anywhere on earth. But in Sichuan, there is a problem. And it's not a shortage of money. It's the opposite. Sichuan sits on the empire's edge, close to hostile territory, and the Song government is terrified of its valuable bronze and copper coins leaking out of the country. So, Beijing makes a decision that sounds bureaucratic and boring, but is actually about to change the world. Copper is banned in Sichuan. From now on, the only currency allowed is iron. Cheap, heavy, nearly worthless per coin. Here is what that actually meant in practice. To buy one single roll of decent silk, a merchant needed roughly 20,000 iron coins. Do the math on the weight, and you land somewhere around 65 kilograms of metal. Call it 140 pounds just to complete one transaction. Let that sink in. A grown man holding nearly his own body weight in coins to buy one bolt of cloth. Merchants weren't traveling with money anymore. They were traveling with cargo, wagons of it, guards for it, warehouses to store it in overnight. So 16 of Chengdu's wealthiest merchant families sit down and solve the problem the way merchants always solve problems, not with philosophy but with paperwork. They call it Jiaozi. It literally means exchange note. Here's how it works. You walk into one of their vaults, you drop off your unbearably heavy pile of oil coins, and they hand you back a slip of mulberry paper, sealed and numbered to prevent forgery. The paper isn't money, not yet. It's a receipt, a claim, a promise that says this note is worth exactly this much iron, sitting safely in a vault whenever you want it. And then something happens that nobody fully planned for. People stop redeeming the notes. Why would they? The paper is lighter, easier to hide, easier to trade. So instead of cashing it in, they just pass it along. Merchant to merchant, stall to stall. The receipt starts circulating as if it were the treasure itself. Nobody declared this. Nobody legislated it. It just happened the way trust always spreads, quietly, person to person, until one day everyone realizes they have been living inside a new reality the whole time. Humanity's first fiat currency was born by accident in the back room of a silk merchant's shop. because carrying iron was giving people back problems. World travels to the capital, and somewhere in the halls of the Song government, someone finally understands what just happened in Chengdu, and it isn't excitement, it's alarm. 16 private merchant families have just discovered how to create purchasing power out of nothing but paper and reputation. It's not a business innovation, that's a monopoly and magic. And empires do not like it when someone other than the empire controls the magic. By 1023, the Song state moves. Private Jiaozi is banned overnight. The government seizes control and creates its own official mint for paper money. Now, here is the twist you are not expecting. At first, they actually do it responsibly. The new state system runs on a strict 28% reserve ratio. For every 100 units of paper they print, they physically hold 28 units of real metal in the vault, ready to redeem on demand. The notes even expire every few years, forcing people to trade in the old batch for a freshly audited new one, a built-in defense against counterfeiting and against the government quietly printing too much. And it works. Trade doesn't just recover, it explodes. Paper money, done honestly, turns out to be one of the most powerful economic tools ever invented. Sichuan's economy roars. But somewhere inside that success is a lesson the Song government has just learned. And it's the kind of lesson that has ruined empires for the next 1,000 years. You don't need to mine more silver. You don't need to conquer more territory. You just need a printing press and the public's trust. And you can manufacture wealth out of thin air. That lesson doesn't stay a theory for long. The threat the Song dynasty always feared finally arrives. The Jurchen-led Jin dynasty invades from the north, and in 1127 they take the capital Kaifeng itself. The imperial court is forced to flee south, rebuilding its government in a new capital, Linan, the city we now call Hangzhou. This isn't a minor military setback, it's an imputation. The Song dynasty has just lost a massive share of its tax base, its farmland, its cities, its people, at the exact moment it needs money the most, because now it's fighting for its life. And that is where the story turns. Quietly, without any grand announcement, the 28% reserve rule gets abandoned. The mandatory note expiration stopped being enforced. Nobody in the Song treasury is asking, how much metal do we have actually? This question is not asked anymore. The only question that matters now is, how much paper do we need to print to keep the army fed this month? In 1107, the currency gets a new name, Qian Yin, and a new, much darker identity. The government prints more than 20 times the volume it used to. And this time there is no meaningful reserve backing it at all. The paper is now just paper, backed by nothing but the government's word, and the government's word is getting cheaper by the year. By the 1160s, the southern Song rolls out yet another paper currency, the Huizhou, and this time they go even further. Hoarding actual copper coins is banned outright. You are no longer just allowed to use paper money. In many cases, you are required to. Think about what that really means. The government isn't just offering a convenient alternative to metal anymore. It's forcing an entire population to trust a promise it has already broken once. And then the final threat arrives, the one that ends dynasties, the Mongols. Facing an enemy that has already dismantled empires twice its size, the Song printing press doesn't slow down. They accelerate. By 1232, Over 300 million notes are circulating through an economy that can no longer support them. 300 million promises, and fewer people left who still believe them. Let's go down to street level, not the palace, not the treasury. A commoner standing in a market in Linan, holding a fistful of official song bank notes. Notes that a generation earlier could have bought a full bolt of silk. Now they can't even buy a bowl of rice. This is where the hyperinflation actually looks like. Close up in the 13th century. Not a graph, not a statistic. It's people scraping paper money off the ground because it's worth more as fuel for a fire than it is as currency. It's a government that has spent 2 centuries teaching its own citizens, one devaluation at a time, that a promise from Beijing isn't worth the mulberry bark it's printed on. And an economy that's been hollowed out from the inside cannot fund an army. Underpaid, undersupplied, and increasingly unwilling to die for a state that can't even pay them in something real. The Song military crumbles. When the Mongols finally arrive in full force, there is nothing left strong enough to stop them. The Song dynasty falls. Kublai Khan takes the throne of a unified China and founds the Yuan dynasty. Here is the twist that makes this whole story worth telling. Kublai Khan doesn't scrap the paper money system he just conquered. He keeps it. He perfects it. He calls it the Chow, and he realizes something the Song dynasty proved for him: a devastating cost. Whoever controls the printing press controls the population. When the Venetian merchant Marco Polo arrives at Kublai's court decades later, he can barely believe what he is looking at. A functioning empire running its entire economy on paper made from tree bark. He writes about it like he's just witnessed sorcery, because as far as 13th century Europe is concerned, he has. The Song dynasty learned humanity's oldest economic lesson a full 1,000 years before the West ever confronted it. A printing press can absolutely fund a war. It can pay an army, hold off an invasion, buy a government a few more years on the throne. But it has never, in the history of every civilization that's tried it, been able to win one. But it has never, in the history of every civilization that has tried it, been able to win one. Because every note you print without something real behind it isn't wealth. It's a debt against tomorrow, quietly handed to people who never agreed to pay. When a government prints its way out of a crisis, it isn't creating money. It's stealing time from its own people, one worthless note at a time. So the next time you pull a bill out of your wallet, look at it again. It's still just paper. The only thing that has changed in 900 years is who is asking you to believe in it.